At this awareness seminar being hosted by the Barbados National Standards Institution under the theme, Getting Our Measurements Right. My name is Renata Linsili, and I am the project coordinator for the BNSI Lab Modernization Project and your master of ceremony this morning. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping matters. First of all, the washrooms. If you exit this room and go down the corridor on your right, you just have a look to the left and there you will see the washrooms. Can we take a moment to just note where the exits are in the room, just in case of an emergency and we need to make a quick getaway? Also, for the Wi-Fi, you can log into the Marriott Bonvoy Conference Network, and the password is Courtyard. At this time, I would like to establish protocol and acknowledge Mrs. Joyanne Blackman Jarvis, the Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, or MIST as we like to call it. We are expecting Mr. Ryan Brathwaite, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Barbados National Standards Institution, BNSI, members of the Board of Directors of the Barbados National Standards Institution, Mr. Hayden Rind, the Acting Director of the BNSI, Mr. Mohan Nandwani, Finance Manager, the CARICOM Regional Organization of Standards and Quality, CrossQ, BNSI staff, CrossQ staff, specially invited guests and champions of businesses and industry, both in person and online, distinguished guests from other public agencies and quality institutions, ladies and gentlemen. The Barbados National Standards Institution is pleased to present you with an exciting and action-packed, dare I say, riveting agenda this morning as we invite you to come with us and explore the wonderful world of metrology. We have a distinguished lineup of experts in the field of metrology who will guide us through the concepts, principles, and the science. We will delve into the importance and practical applications of metrology, and then we will finish off with some lively and interactive discussions. We anticipate to wrap up by midday, and then we will invite you to join us for lunch. Now first, to the podium, please let us welcome Mr. Jonathan Platt. He's a technical officer in the Specifications Development, Quality Control and Certification Department of the BNSI to officially welcome you on behalf of the BNSI. Mr. Platt.
You're a bit shorter than me. Well, as protocols have been firmly established by Lynn, my name is Jonathan Platt, as she's mentioned before, so welcome. That's my part finished. Can I sit down? Oh, no, okay, I've got to say a few more words, all right. Okay, World Metrology Day is celebrated on the 20th of May every year. And funny enough, we missed it, didn't we? Because we had the bank holiday and we celebrated in silence. But now we're here to celebrate metrology. Now, it's interesting that 149 years of official metrology has been celebrated. And the year theme was Sustainability We Measure Today for Sustainable Tomorrow. Isn't that a wonderful theme for the year? Metrology is not to be confused with meteorology. I always sort of use them words kind of interchangeable, but we're not dealing with the weather today. But I would say to you, we are of course in the hurricane season, so we need to be conscious of the weather, not unconscious. Well, welcome to Metrology Awareness Seminar. Now we're gathered here to explore the fascinating world of measurement Our theme, as Lynn has mentioned already, is getting our measurement right. And that couldn't be more relevant today. So why does metrology matter? Why are we considering that subject in any case? Well, think about precision engineering. Think about that for a moment. Precision engineering, accurate measurements are essential, whether it is in manufacturing components, aerospace, automotive, or medical devices. Meeting strict tolerances ensure product quality and safety. What about trade and fairness? Metrology promotes fair trade in implementing an agreed-upon measurement system. When we buy goods, for example, we rely on accurate measurements to ensure transaction fairness. You agree? Now, what about the field of health and safety? From pharmaceutical to environmental monitoring, precise measurements impact our well-being. I want you to imagine for a moment the consequences if drug doses or air quality measurements are inaccurate. Can you imagine what that would mean? Now, in standards, we like to define words so that there's no ambiguity. Measurement, adequacy. There's 3 areas, for example: accuracy, precision, and reliability. Now, accuracy is defined as how close a measured value is to its true value. You got that? We're going to be testing you later on. Precision, consistency and reproducibility of measurements. And reliability, a consistency of results under similar conditions. Now remember this, in all measurements, some degree of uncertainty exists. Identifying and then minimizing errors is essential. So let us embark on this journey together, ensuring that our measurements are precise and meaningful. So I thank you for being part of the Metrology Awareness Seminar. So let us go and measure right.
Jonathan, you know when you leave something, you have to put it back correctly, huh? I will be having words with the missus. Thank you, Mr. Platt. With a few opening remarks, please welcome Mr. Hayden Rind, the Acting Director of the BNSI.
Thank you, Lynn. I noticed that she replaced the microphone at a higher height. But good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you and greet you and give you opening remarks. And I know that time is money, time is scarce. So for you to be here sitting with your presence at our seminar and giving this importance really warms my heart and the entire team of BNSI. So I'm very, very grateful that you took time to spend just a little bit with us this morning speaking about getting measurements right. BNSI, as you know, we're the National Standards Bureau, but we're also the National Metrology Institute of Barbados. Now, you would have listened to Jonathan make a distinction between meteorology and metrology. Metrology is the science of measurement, and it's actually a key pillar in the quality infrastructure in Barbados. And quality is critical if our businesses are to be competitive, if we're going to have exports increase as we want. We're trying to grow our economy, and quality really is the best strategy. So metrology fits right in there. But just to give you a little, perhaps, practical context, how many in the room are wearing watches? How many of you are wearing a watch now? Almost everybody. Now, if I were to take the time on all of the watches, I am sure there would be a deviation, plus and minus something, right? How many of you had either a clock or a watch which either lost time or gained time, and you always had to reset it? I could tell you, there's a clock on my wall at home which has a minute a day it loses a minute every day. So in 30 days, in a month, it will be half an hour behind. All right? Now, I know we've established the protocols. I know that I still wanted to give a special thanks, though, to our Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ms. Joyanne Blackman-Jarvis, for joining us. And our chairman, after the protocols were read, came into the room. So Mr. Ryan Brathwaite, the chairman of the board of directors, is here. And online, I had conversations with Mr. Derek Omar. Welcome. This is the CEO of the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality. So quite a few people are paying attention to this seminar. Now, how do you reset a watch, going back to the example, if it is off time? You have to compare it to something else. Perhaps another watch that you think is accurate. Maybe you go online with the internet. Maybe your phones, which normally, if they're in sync, has the right time. But how do you reset other measurement devices if they're off? We have demonstrations that you would see today being given with a scale. We trust readings, and we trust them to be accurate and right in the medical field, in industry, in manufacturing, in food. You know, I have members from the hospital here. We have medical practitioners here. How do you know if they're accurate? You know, and what do you do to correct inaccuracies? So in essence, the thrust of today's seminar is just that. Now, Jonathan mentioned World Metrology Day. Yes, that was May 20th, and we did publish a few articles showing the relevance of metrology and Metrology Day, but accurate measurements really are the backbone of quality, the backbone of safety, the backbone of efficiency across all of our sectors. So once again, I welcome you. I also acknowledge Mr. Nandwani, who just walked in. Mohan, thanks for coming. And I really look forward to the presentations, and more so, the question and answer session that we will have at the end. We will also engage our online viewers to really learn, you know, how do we get our measurements right? So thank you for joining with the BNSI team, and I'm looking forward to the entire engagement. Thank you so much. I'm learning.
See, this is what happens after a good, what, Mr. Ryan, about 15 years of marriage? Well sorted?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Yes, BNSI is the National Metrology Institute of Barbados, and as such, part of our responsibility is to build awareness and appreciation for measurement standards on the island. And now, everyone, we have a feature address from the esteemed chairman of the board of directors of the, yes, esteemed chairman, Mr. Ryan Brathwaite.
Good morning. And I hope that I could at least put this back in the same position that it was before I've taken this podium. Good morning to everyone. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and valued partners. Good morning, and welcome to this pivotal awareness seminar on the theme, Getting Our Measurements Right. I am honored to address you today as the chairman of the Barbados National Standards Institution. This seminar marks a significant step in our collective efforts to underscore the importance of accurate measurements across various industries in Barbados and to highlight their crucial role in bolstering our national economy. Measurements, often taken for granted, are the silent pillars supporting our daily lives, industries, and economic activities. From the food we consume to the buildings we inhabit, from healthcare to manufacturing, precise and accurate measurements ensure quality, safety, and efficiency. Today, we gather to appreciate the profound impact of these measurements and to discuss how we can enhance their accuracy to drive industrial excellence and economic growth in Barbados. Accurate measurements are the foundation of trust and reliability in any industry. They ensure that products meet specified standards and regulatory requirements, which is vital for consumer safety and satisfaction. Inaccurate measurements, on the other hand, can lead to catastrophic failures, product recalls, legal issues, and loss of consumer confidence. Consider the healthcare sector, for example, where precise measurements of dosages, diagnostic tools, and patient monitoring equipment can mean the difference between life and death. In the food industry, accurate measurements are critical for maintaining nutritional information, ensuring food safety, and complying with international trade standards. I am informed that today we have active demonstrations on best practices for measuring the net weight of food, which I am sure you will all agree needs close attention, as our food bills are oftentimes our biggest bills. For Barbados, accurate measurements are not just a matter of compliance, but a competitive advantage. Our key industries, tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, and emerging sectors such as renewable energy, depend heavily on the integrity of measurements. In tourism, ensuring the highest standards in hospitality and service quality is paramount. Accurate measurements in this sector translate to maintaining the quality of food and beverages, ensuring the safety of recreational facilities, and providing reliable environmental data, which enhances the overall visitor experience. Agriculture, a cornerstone of our economy, relies on precise measurements for the application of fertilizers, pesticides, and water. Accurate measurements ensure optimal crop yields, sustainable farming practices, and compliance with export standards, which is crucial for our international trade relations. In manufacturing, precision in measurements affects every stage of the production process, from the quality of raw materials to the final product. This precision not only ensures that our products meet global standards, but also enhances our reputation in international markets, fostering growth and investment. The economic benefits of getting our measurements right are substantial. Accurate measurements reduce waste, increase efficiency, and enhance product quality, all of which contribute to higher productivity and profitability. Moreover, adherence to international standards and accurate measurements can open up new markets for Barbadian products, driving export growth and economic diversification. At the BNSI, we are committed to promoting a culture of precision and accuracy in our measurements. Our initiatives include the development and implementation of standards, regular calibration of measuring instruments, and continuous training and awareness programs like this seminar that we are at today. We believe that fostering a rigorous standards regime can enhance the quality and competitiveness of Barbadian products and services. As we move forward, let us remember that accurate measurements are not merely a technical requirement, but a strategic asset. They are integral to ensuring quality, safety, and competitiveness across all sectors of our economy. By prioritizing accuracy in measurements, we can achieve industrial excellence, enhance consumer trust, and drive sustainable economic growth for Barbados. I encourage all stakeholders to engage actively in today's discussions, share insights, and collaborate on solutions to help us get our measurements right. Together, we can build a robust foundation for a prosperous and competitive Barbadian economy. Thank you, and I wish you all a productive and enlightening seminar. Thank you. Now, as I try to return this mic to its position, I also want to speak about measurements in the construction industry, for which I am a part. Now, we would have just, in another hat that I wear, we would have just completed the renovation of Kensington Oval. And thank you. And today we have an open day where we have the public, members of the public, coming to view the work that we've done over the last 4 months. And I can tell you that even in terms of sport, in the sporting industry, and as we welcome the world to our shores, it is important that we have accurate measurement systems in terms of our timing clocks. You know, we use a lot of technology with the cricket in terms of the replays and that kind of stuff. And we know that if you're not accurate, this can make or break a team. So even within the context of sport, even though it was not mentioned in my presentation, we have to ensure that we get our measurements right. Because if we don't do that, we can embarrass ourselves. So again, I want to thank you for coming to this seminar, and I enjoyed making that presentation to you just now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair, for your insightful address. And you've really done an excellent job of creating the context for this awareness seminar. As you just said, you know, it's all about making metrology relatable, bringing the science home so that people can understand how science connects with everyday life, you know, your everyday activities, the mundane, but then government policy, you know, government initiatives, as well as whatever goals you have. I'm really looking forward to cricket, I can say. So, thank you. So, you know, here we are. So I think we're off to a wonderful start. And right now we're going to have a 15-minute break. So by my clock, it is 10:06. So can we please get back here in 15 minutes? And that would be just about 21 past. All right, so enjoy the break, everyone. Hi. Oh, okay, wonderful. So yes, the break is in the outer court to the very end. Thanks, everybody. Okay, great. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed our break. We've had our appetizers, so now we're about to step into the main course. And we have a very exciting presentation by Mr. Damien Prescott. He is the metrologist at the BNSI, and he is going to walk us through the importance of metrology.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Lynn, and welcome again, colleagues, guests, members of the board. My name is Damien Prescott, and I will just go through very briefly the importance of metrology, giving you real-life cases and examples of the work that BNSI has conducted over the past 2 years that I've been there in the metrology sector. And this is just a small subset of stakeholders that we are going to cover today with our metrology work. So just sit back and enjoy. Okay, all right, great. So metrology, not to be confused with meteorology, I said before, but I have a good understanding, or maybe a better term, a great understanding of both. I was previously engaged in metrology services at Caribbean Institute of Meteorology, so I understand the difference and the confusion that some of you may have. But metrology in our sense of the words is defined as, and this is the official definition of metrology, the science of measurement embracing both experimental and theoretical determinations at any level of uncertainty in any field of science and technology. And I have the word uncertainty here in red, and there is a specific reason for that. So we'll get into it as we go forward. On May 20th, as Mr. Ryan, Ms. Seeley, and Jonathan would have alluded to earlier, we celebrated World Metrology Day on Island, and the global theme this year is measurement. We measure today for a sustainable tomorrow. So we're trying to ensure that the resources we have on the planet are available for those who inherit what we have at present. There are two elements to metrology as you would recognize. There is a scientific metrology aspect, which BNSI would cater to, and then there's a legal metrology aspect, which our colleagues at the DCCA would address. Legal metrology is more aligned to enforcement of metrology services in the sectors that we work, and the scientific metrology aspect just deals with the accuracy and ensuring that there is an unbroken chain of traceability for the instruments that we will be utilizing in the metrology space, right? So that's clear? All right. Uncertainty, a scary term for all because it has this element of mathematics into it, but once you have the calculation in your Excel sheet, like I do and Mr. Ryan would have had before, it becomes very easy because you're just plugging in figures after and you let the Excel form or the code do it for us. But nonetheless, the explanation or definition for uncertainty means doubt. So we want to assess and quantify the doubt of the measurement, and you would expect that your doubt for your measurement should be very, very small. Yes? All right, great. Accuracy. So Jonathan touched on this a bit earlier. Uncertainty provides a measure of confidence in the accuracy of your measurement, and as such, we appreciate the fact that uncertainty values provide an indication of the accuracy of that measurement. So when we issue our certificates of verification or calibration, there is an uncertainty value that is issued to all clients and stakeholders for the work that we do. That will give a relevance of accuracy in the measurements that we perform, so that when an auditor comes to our stakeholders in their sectors, then there is that confidence that the verification or calibration that was carried out cannot be questioned per se. International organizations which work in the metrology space, the OIML, as well as the BIPM, and these are the logos for those. They operate in Europe and France. And then we go into metrology in the context of Barbados with the DCCA, trade and commerce, and the ISO. So how does metrology infuse itself in commerce locally? We have, as defined and explained before, BNSI, taking care of the scientific metrology aspect, DCCA, legal, trade and commerce depends on accurate measurement. You would have heard the chairman mention that earlier. And then we are all obligated to align our activities as close to ISO standards as possible. That is with standards, that is with in compliance. And you can see here, I have a mention of it in a graphic, but there's a slide further down that will explain this a bit further. The SI units. SI units pretty much govern what we do in the metrology space. You have an NMI, which is what BNSI is. You have your national standards. Those are standards that represent themselves across the stakeholder landscape on island. Your accreditation bodies, your certification bodies, your calibration bodies, and then your industry. The industry is very dependent on the work that is done above at those entities, which are all guided by the SI units as issued by ISO, International Standards Organization. So here we have a infographic of a metrology system. Again, this is the representation of the SI units, the updated version. This would have changed last year. You have your NMI, BNSI, doing calibration and testing for our stakeholders. Then you have your producers, your manufacturers. Some of them are in the audience, and you will see some photos of you, those who were late. If you see yourself on the slide, don't be scared. There are the service providers and retailers and traders, and then obviously not to be left last are considered to be insignificant, but the consumers, because most of the time the consumers feel the brunt of anything that we do correctly or incorrectly. All right? So this is one of our first examples. This is a food production facility, which can be seen here conducting some verification of the scales. I want to give a real-life example of how the work that BNSI conducts in this example. Yes, Mr. Jemand, this is our work, yes. So take for an example that this scale has a plus or minus 5% error in it. So it's either accurate, 5% good, or 5% bad, layman's terms. So if you check my LinkedIn, I have a calculation which I put up when I conducted this work, and it shows that this food production facility can either lose approximately $70,000 a year with a 5% error on their scales. Obviously, they're working with tons, hundreds of tons of chicken on an annual basis. So if you have a scale that has an error of 5%, then you are likely to lose about $70,000. So if I were a production facility manager and I wanted to find resources to do stuff at my plant to make my employees happy, then this is one area that I would focus on to save what I consider to be economic loss. That's how I term it, right? That's the first example. Everybody is good with this one? Say again? You can lose or gain, yeah. So, well, we can do that in the question and answer, all right?
Yeah, and if you extrapolate the loss to country, right? And the retail sector contributing 15% to our GDP, 5% error on these scales translates to $46.9 million a year that the country could be losing from just 5%. Good? So a very good point, Vivian. Thank you.
And then another important sector, well, I don't gamble, but this is some work that we conduct for Barbados Lotteries, and some of you might be surprised in the fact that these 33 balls all have very similar weight. I want you to take another example or consideration, that if I heavily paint ball 16 a little heavier, or I coat it with the pink paint a little heavier, the likelihood that it will reach the vacuum and be chosen as a number in a lottery reduces. So your lottery is also heavily dependent on accurate measurement at the BNSI, right? So if I found a situation where 5 balls in here that are heavier than the rest, we got issues there that we would need obviously to bring to light. The GAIA, represented here by my colleague, Cedric, we would assist the DCCA in verifying the skills at the airport. Again, another very important sector. For those who travel often, a pound heavier or lighter in your bag could equate to 30 US, 50 US, sometimes 100 US. So we would like to appreciate that the skills at the airport are measured accurately, which I can attest as of March 2024 they are. And we will do a follow-up exercise in collaboration with the DCCA sometime around September. So that's another important area that we conduct some of our metrology work. And this is not the only area at the airport that we work. I see Mr. Blemman here. Thank you for coming. The Aviation Technical Services Board, we assist them through our partner in GMBS, and I will speak to that. But before we get to ATSB, BWA. Currently, BNSI is assisting BWA and the FTC in a meter verification exercise, assuring the quality of the water meters that are at commercial and residential properties. We want to ensure that those water meters are accurately recording the water that you're utilizing. This is a water stress country, so this type of work is very important. This is a national initiative. BBC, the beverage industry, again, food and production. Darius is not here, but he sent his colleague in his stead. So in this specific example, we are measuring and verifying at the scale that infuses the gas, the carbon dioxide, into the sweet drinks, is doing its job in terms of the specific pressure. If the pressure in the bottles is in excess, it could be an explosive situation. So that is another area where metrology is critically important. Medical services. Ms. Gaskin, thank you for coming. We do, on occasion, sometimes twice a year, go to the QEH, calibrate the scales in the diagnostic lab, digital scales, analog scales, histology, where we're weighing drugs which are utilized in administering to persons at the hospital, medical diagnosis and production of drugs for NCDs and such like. We also assist the histology department with their weighing of organs post-passing. And you will want to measure, your hearts and your livers and your cysts, any organs in the body that are cancerous, so that you can have a determination of what were attributable reasons for that person dying and such like. Again, the importance of metrology, and this is just a small example, metrology in the medical industry. The International Food Science Center, we have done calibrations on request for the IFSC in fruit production. So they are, as some of you might know, working in food production, not just for themselves, the Landship brand, but also for small, medium, and larger entrepreneurs who do not have a production facility. So we will go and calibrate their scales, calibrate their pH meters, calibrate their turbidity meters, or at least check them to ensure that the quality of products coming out of the IFSC meet the standard that we would like nationally. I'm back now to the airport again, and these are some instruments that we would have worked with our partners at the GMBS, which is the Guyana National Standards Bureau. BNSI at present, we don't have the capability to do some of the tests, but we are on our way there. So Mr. Blemmer, who's in the audience at the back, as well as Mr. Bramo, would have received assistance from the BNSI in collaboration with GMBS. So we just want to thank GMBS, our colleagues Vishnu and Donna, for their assistance so that we can help our stakeholder in the aviation sector calibrate and verify the instruments. And these are really important. These are high and low pressure gauges for gases in the aviation industry, for the wheels. When you want to use the calipers to measure stuff, then it's really important. You don't want to make any mistakes in the aviation sector. Obviously, the blowback could be catastrophic, right? Loss of life is what we will be dealing with there, or definitely severe injury. In the fishing sector, I go around and I perform verification and calibration of the scales. I don't know if many of you are avid lovers of fish like I am, but I do recognize the increase in cost of fish. Dolphin a few years ago was $7 a pound. Now it's almost $12. So when you are buying fish from the market and you're paying almost $14 a pound for a piece of fish, you want to be sure that the scale that's measuring it is measuring it accurately, or your purchasing power will significantly decrease. All right? Important sectors that we at BNSI are intending on pursuing: climate. There's a call presently, I think the call ends this week from the BIPM, call for abstracts for metrology and meteorology. How is that important? Well, if you read here, the UN Maritime Law Court has ruled that SIDS, which Barbados is a SID, can legally challenge actions of developed states as it would pertain to greenhouse gas emissions, which impact our livelihoods. Temperatures, we are going to have lunch on the inside, just because outside is going to get really hot at midday. I have been around long enough to recognize that it is definitely hotter now in present day than it was when I was a lad. So I do my own personal measurement. And then we have aspects of hurricanes, ocean acidification. All of these require metrology in their assessment. If you're going to challenge anything legally, the accuracy of your measurement has to be sound. Because if I was a good lawyer and I was representing a developed state, I would want to know.
First question.
Yeah, where are you getting your data from?
Right.
Has it been verified? Was it done by an accredited lab? What is the accuracy? What is the uncertainty? And if I could pick that apart in court, then small and developing states don't have any foot to stand on when they go and try to assess loss and damage funds whenever we get to that point. So, to close, metrology is definitely important. And what we have described here in terms of visuals is just, as I said, a small subset of stakeholders, because there are others that are not represented here today. And I hope that you have a greater appreciation for the work that is being conducted at BNSI in terms of its metrology services. Thank you.
Wow. Well, I think it's safe to say, Damien, that you have left no doubt in my mind really how important metrology is. I mean, every point that you touched on, from the economics to the climate, is critical, really. So thank you so very much for sharing your clearly extensive knowledge and experiences with us. Again, you did a fantastic job of really bringing context to what we are trying to do, not just this morning with the awareness seminar, but also the work that we do at BNSI. So thank you very, very much for that. Next, we are going to have Mr. Nicole Best join us at the podium. He is the Technical Officer of Metrology at CrossQ. So CrossQ, as we mentioned, is the CARICOM regional organization for standards and quality. And we know it's always good to know what your neighbors are doing. So Nicole is going to bring us, well, in the metrology field, Nicole is going to bring us the regional perspective to metrology, what is currently being done around the CARICOM region. We work very, very closely, not only with CrossQ, but our colleagues around the CARICOM region in the standards field. So Nicole, please come and enlighten us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's my distinct pleasure to be here today to present to you all today on metrology in the region, from the Caribbean to the world. So basically, my presentation would cover these three areas: CrossQ and CARIMET, metrology, regional and international, the regional strategy and development in metrology. So just a brief overview about CrossQ. as mentioned before, Lynn mentioned before, it's the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality. It was established in 2002, through the signing of an intergovernmental agreement with the 15 CARICOM countries, member states. So basically, CROSCU is made up of the CROSCU Secretariat as well as the CROSCU Council. And basically, CROSCU's mission is working together to facilitate the growth, resilience, and sustainable development of CARICOM through the advancement of an internationally recognized regional quality infrastructure. So just a little bit about CROSCU again and why it's important. So CROSCU's mandate is to promote the development and harmonization of standards, metrology, technical regulations, and the mutual recognition of conformity assessment procedures for goods and services in CARICOM. Basically, the goal is to facilitate trade, support the establishment of the CSME. CROSCU plays a critical role in enhancing regional integration, improving product quality, protecting consumers, and facilitating economic development, thereby underscoring its importance within CARICOM. So basically, I spoke about CROSCU, and now I'm speaking about CARIMET. So basically, CARIMET is the Caribbean Metrology Corporation. CARIMET is a special committee of CROSCU, and it is made up of 15 CARICOM member states, as well as the Dominican Republic, which we call, when they're all together, we call that CARIFORUM, which some of you would be aware of. So basically, the mission of CARIMET is to strengthen and promote an internationally recognized measurement infrastructure in the countries of CARIFORUM to meet the current and future needs of the region. So basically, we have it there, right? CARIMET is for us, for our region, for our 15 member states, as well as the Dominican Republic. So this is just to give an appreciation of the member states that make up CARIMET, the CARIMET committee. So we have Suriname, Trinidad, Barbados, Belize, Antigua, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Jamaica, Grenada, Guyana, Montserrat, Haiti, Bahamas, Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and as I mentioned, the Dominican Republic. So basically, the work of CARIMET did not start yesterday or last year or the year before that. It started a long time ago, right? So since 2003 and 2005, CARIMET, in terms of Jamaica in 2003 and the 11 Caribbean countries in 2005, we all became associate members of the BIPM. So Damien mentioned the BIPM. The BIPM is the International Bureau of Weights and Measures in France. So in 2008, the CROSCU CARIMET Committee was formed, right? CARIMET was adopted as a special committee in 2008, but CARIMET also existed before that, because CARIMET was originally, and still is, a sub-region of SIM. And SIM is actually the international, inter-American system for metrology, right, which covers this region. So in terms of, well, in 2010 and 2015, CARIMET would have had their first mass ILC. And ILC is an interlab comparison. This is whereby all the countries participate and measure this one particular artifact or a number of artifacts. In this case, it was a set of weights, and we all checked to see the equivalence in terms of everyone's measurements. So this was one of the first ILCs that took place and was actually approved and published on the BIPM key comparison database. So in 2015, this was when the mass CARL was established. Now the CARL, as you see the name there, that is the Caribbean Reference Lab. Now that lab, or labs, because we have more than one, serves as the reference for the entire region. So we have CARL set up in Jamaica in terms of mass and volume. We have some in Trinidad as well being developed. I will speak to them later on as well. So in 2017, we also had the volume CARL being established, and we also had another ILC, a comparison within the region as well. And as you see here, from 2021 to present, we would have had a lot of metrology development taking place. So basically, CROSCU became a member of SIM. We also developed and are still developing, right, our regional capabilities in more corals in humidity, pressure, temperature, and other areas, and electrical energy. We also have a lot of capacity building regionally taking place, and we have also developed a strategic plan that covers 2021 to 2025. Now, so just a bit about the values of CARIMET and the commitment. Based on our strategic plan, because you all heard Mr. Bradford, the chairman, speak about strategy. Now, it's very important at our level, at the regional level, that we have a strategy, a metrology strategy in place, which supports Barbados and all the other member states to help develop metrology. So it starts at the regional level. Actually, it starts at the international level, but our strategy itself is really tied in at the regional level and trickles down into all the different member states. So in terms of values, we have transparency, inclusiveness, technically competent, and basically we are committed to enhance metrology regionally. So this is the burning question. Why is CARIMET important? So let's look at it from this perspective. We have economic development, regional collaboration taking place, and resource sharing, because we all know, especially in small island developing states, we may not have all the resources necessary to develop metrology, but we can lean on our brothers or sisters to help us out, right? So basically, in this sense, CARIMET is important because it provides support for the CSME by providing a reliable metrology infrastructure. And we all heard about accuracy, so it helps us with accurate and reliable measurements in many different fields, many different industries, as Damien would have alluded to, right? It also helps in terms of regional collaboration because we have regular meetings, and CARIMET as well is represented by Barbados. The vice chair is actually from Barbados. We have regular meetings, and we discuss a lot of issues and how to go about developing metrology within the region. So basically, in terms of resource sharing, so by pooling these resources and expertise, CARIMET enhances the overall metrological capabilities in our region. So basically, at the end of it, CARIMET is very critical and crucial for ensuring measurement accuracy and consistency across the Caribbean, which supports trade, economic development, consumer protection, innovation, and regional collaboration. So let me take you all into a little bit of the regional and international sphere of metrology. As you see here, you would see what we call all the different regional metrology organizations. We see SIM, Euromet, CUMET, GulfMet, AfriMet. So these represent all the major areas. Okay. So let me just get into this. So just a little bit here again. At the international level, we have the BIPM, OIML, regional level, CROSSQ, CARIMET, and at the national level, the BNSI and all the other national standards bureaus where the National Metrology Institute is usually at. So some of the key, in terms of regional metrology development, these are some of the key metrology project partners, donors, and collaboration. Some of the areas of development and support: metrology for meteorology, digital transformation. We have the Caribbean Reference Labs, which I would have spoken about before, the metrology working groups. So CARIMET has working groups, legal metrology and quality, and we also have various working groups within SIM. So there's a lot of capacity building, training, sensitization and awareness, and also we aid in the development of metrology legislation, the review and development, and also metrology strategy development. So just to take you quickly into what our strategic plan looks like, just the themes and stuff. So we have 5 themes, basically. CARIMET governance and operations, measurement traceability, which Damien spoke about, which is very important, knowledge management and dissemination, promotion of CARIMET, as well as the use of information technology. So in terms of these areas, there are just a few things here that you could look at in terms of, CARIMET governance and operations. We have CARIMET network capacity, developing working groups, Another important one, knowledge management, creating a knowledge repository, as well as training. So these are just some of the key activities under each theme. So basically, our strategic plan, it's targeted implementation. We are coming from streamlining CARIMET's operations and really driving that metrology strategy, executing that strategy in order to hit that bullseye. So basically, at the end of it, the completion of these strategic activities leads to economic integration, advancement in technology, increased trust and compliance, very important, increased regional capacity and cooperation, as well as enhanced measurement accuracy. And this is what feeds into the whole regional metrology development. And thank you.
You can tell the gentleman who in this room who I know these significant others that I can have a quick word with, can't you? Thank you so much, Nicole. Wow. So not only is there a lot going on at the BNSI in terms of metrology, but we can clearly see that there's lots happening in the entire CARICOM region. And you know, we learn so much through the regional cooperation, coordination, and experience sharing that Nicole was just mentioning through regional committees, like CARIMET, which really bring the member states together. So we really have to applaud the work that is going on in the region, and we can see how very much is being accomplished, and yet more is also being worked on. So well done, and thank you very much, Nicole. Now, Damien would have mentioned in his presentation the concept of legal metrology. So next we are going to invite Mrs. Margaret Campbell-Leslie. She is the Deputy Director at the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, the DCCA, and she is going to speak to us a little bit about legal metrology and the DCCA. Margaret, thank you.
Okay, good morning. Good morning. Yes, it is good to be here and to share with you a little bit about what we do at the Department of Commerce as it relates to legal metrology. Okay, good. Now, I think by now you all know what metrology is: the science of measurement and its application. And there are three subfields of metrology. We have legal metrology, we have industrial metrology, and scientific metrology. Now let's switch. Oh. Okay. All right, now we would have started working on a new metrology bit of legislation. We started 2019, I think. And I remember that one of the first consultant to that project used this example to show in a layman's way what the three metrology subfields really, really mean. And I thought it was very interesting. I thought I would share it with you this morning. Okay, so let's look at it like this. Barbados, like a bakery, would purchase measuring devices such as scales and measuring cups from an external, reputable supplier. That supplier would benefit from the research, the scientific metrology, that is done to create the measurement instruments they sell. And we know that developed countries invest heavily in scientific metrology, as this gives their industry a competitive edge, such as in the field of automobile manufacturing, nanotechnology, additive, like where it came from, manufacturing, electronics, communication, and the military. So, the internal measurements that the bakery now uses from its own recipes, and which are critical for the unique taste and texture of the breads that that bakery produces, is industrial metrology. And then once the bakery goes to sell the bread to a customer, possibly by weight, or if you're looking at salt bread, by count, then this becomes a legal metrology matter, as trade measurements are regulated in all countries. If the customer purchases a 2-kilogram loaf of bread, the loaf should be 2 kilograms. So you can see there at a layman's level what the 3 subfields, how they marry to give you that whole metrology system. Okay, so Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs and the BNSI, and we work seamlessly together, even in the development of the metrology bill. We work together. I called Hayden up, Damien, Lynn, we all work together in order to ensure that, consumers are protected and trade is enhanced. Now, so the BNSI is responsible for the industrial and the scientific metrology, and the Department of Commerce is responsible for legal metrology. And we saw this as an international best practice, as it separates the regulator from the trade facilitator, and is the model that countries are now adopting. We have Jamaica having the same setup, where the two entities, although they work well, they work together, they're still separate. Now, what is legal metrology? And really and truly, it is just metrology that you marry with regulations. So it means the subfield of metrology concerned with the regulatory requirements of measurements and measuring instruments for the protection of health, public safety, the environment, enabling taxation, protection of consumers, and fair trade. And we at the department, therefore, then we would verify instruments to ensure that consumers are getting what they're paying for, and then, of course, you, the business person, that you are not giving away too much of your product. But at this point, I had an experience, not recently, a couple of years ago, Hayden. I would share with you why it is that we, how we can protect the consumer, how metrology can protect the consumers. I had an experience a couple of years ago where I was speeding, but not quite speeding. Okay, so I was doing 85 on a 60-kilometer road. But that was a highway. But all highways in Barbados are not equal. Some highways you cut off at 60, some you can go to 80, but this one was 60, and the police pulled me over. And if you know Margaret, she is frightened for policemen. Frightened, so I stopped. But somehow this morning, I was on my way to church. I probably got a little bold then. So the police stopped me, and he showed me the radar gun. He says, "Ma'am, you were doing 85 on this road." And he said, "But this is a highway, so I'm just 5 kilometers out." He says, "No, this is 60. I said, "But there are no signs saying it's 60, but you were speeding." And I said to him, "When was that gun last calibrated?" I know, starting to learn a little bit about metrology. And he looked at me, and there was a senior was there as well, and the senior said, "She know the law, let me go along." And I said, "Oh my gosh, they're going to throw the book at me," because I dared to challenge them. But I never heard about that. So you see why it's important that you kind of know your rights as a consumer. Yeah. Okay, so as I said before, we are the regulators, and we enforce the provisions of right now is the Weights and Measures Act, very archaic, looking to bring a new one to the board at some point. And we partner with the BNSI, and how we do that, BNSI is responsible for calibration, so I will look at that a bit later with the working standards, and they will calibrate our working standards. And that our inspectors use to do their daily verification processes. And they're also the National Metrology Institute, Hayden and Lynn or Damien. And as such, they would, feed us with information. They are connection, our conduit to the international arena, and they would give us information, any training Hayden would share with us, and we just really lean on them for support because I think that they're more mature in metrology than we are. We are now learning. And therefore, then, we are responsible for the verification activities, which when you look at the law, you see the role that we will play there. Now, I mentioned the word working standards, and that working standards are what all our inspectors use to go out there to do verification. And I just gave you an example because I guess you may be wondering what is a standard, what is a working standard. And I gave this one that they would use when they're checking the gas stations to ensure that you're getting the amount of petrol that you're paying for. And they use that prover. Okay, so when they do verifications, what they do is then I don't know if you've ever noticed where there is a sticker on the side of a petrol pump or the scales at the airport, they put a sticker there, and that says that that instrument has been verified and is giving you what you should be getting in terms of the product. So I have here some instruments that we verify, just put a few there. The pumps, net contents of prepackaged food, scales at supermarkets, and then we also do the scales at which Damien spoke to, the GAIC. And we know how important that is. I know we ladies, Alice, I don't know, speak for myself, I've gone, you go to the airport and you're overweight. And you try to shuffle to lower this one that, and then they tell you if you're overweight by, 5 kilograms, it's like $100 US. And therefore, it's important that those scales be correct because you don't want to be paying that extra money to the airlines. But more importantly, we don't want either that the weight that goes onto those planes, that weight is excessive, because then that could be disastrous. So you see how important accurate measurements are. Okay, so the current Weights and Measures Act speaks to that the international system of units should have legal force in Barbados. That was never really, that's in the law, but also that act also says that the minister should pass an order. That was not done, and so therefore we can use both the metric and the imperial. However, the Standards Act, not however, as well, the Standards Act that we also enforce, that also says that when you're looking at prepackaged product, it should have on the metric measurement. It can also have imperial, but it should have the metric. But we are going to a place where, in metrology, we are going to a place where Barbados will have to be just using the metric. Because other than that, we will have great difficulty in tracing our measurements back to international standards. Okay, so I just thought I would look a bit at some of the offenses under the old Act. So it is an offense to sell a person less than what they've paid for. I think that's a given. We know that's wrong. But we know that we still experience that. Although, I don't know, sometimes you go to some places and they're weighing things, and you will look to see the front of the scale. But the front of the scale is to them. You only see in the back. But if you, on the law, based on the law, if you are buying, like you say it's fish, and you say to them, I want to see they're obligated by law to let you see how it is being measured. Yeah? But we don't want, okay, yeah. And then the same with prepackaged goods. It is, again, an offense to sell less than what the person is buying. You should not sell except by net weight or measurement, and that net weight should always be on the package. So if somebody sells you, say, something with container and wrap up and so on, and then weigh it, then that's not a net weight. That is a gross weight, and that's illegal. All right. Also, the inspectors, they too are culpable, and they have got to do the right thing in terms of not accepting bribes and not stamping instruments that they have not verified. So just to conclude, we know what legal metrology is. It's just adding that legality to metrology, and it certainly helps to protect the consumers. It helps to level playing field for commerce, control fraud, and support commodity export. And I thank you for listening.
Margaret, now I have to give you lashes, see? Anyway. Exactly. We're big on that at BNSI. Thank you so much, Margaret. Yes, the DCCA, they are the sister organization of BNSI, and they are our enforcement arm. And yes, we do work seamlessly with DCCA. Thank you so much for that. Legal metrology, yes, we all want to make sure that we do what we are legally obligated to do, whether we are speeding or not. That's 15 kilometers over, Margaret. Come on now. So finally, folks, we're going to have Mr. Damien Prescott join us again, and he is going to give us a practical demonstration for for dealing with accuracy in measurements.
Thanks, Lynn. I actually have a sous chef here with me, Mr. Ray. So we're going to do this in tandem. So this is going to be in the room example now, nothing on the screen. It's just a visual of what I would recognize at some entities, businesses, organizations that we go and perform work at in the context of the skills. So maybe I should switch. So give me the mobile mic and you can start here.
All right, so sous chef. So as Damien goes across, we heard a lot. I really enjoyed the presentation so far. In order to see the demonstration, if you want to stand, you can, okay? Because the table here may restrict some at the back from stand. I see Sharon and them saying yes. So you could stand. We're going to make this, or come forward and even surround the table. This is an engaging part of the exercise. We're going to bring it from overly technical to something that you can really understand and appreciate. We spoke about SI and Imperial earlier. Now, when you're in the field, you understand that language. Some people outside of the field, even working in industry, you don't quite, Imperial, SI, what are we talking about? If you were to guess my height, for example, right? And I told you I was 6'2", you may say that's reasonable. If I were to ask you my height in meters for all the money in my pocket, what's my height in meters? 185 centimeters? You know why he knows that? He's also 6'2". That's a good answer, and let's see how, no, I just have cards in my pocket, sir. But I say that because we need to tie in a general sense, for everyone to understand this transition from imperial measurements to what Damien is saying, to SI units. So this scale is going to be in kilograms. How many of us in here eat food? daily. How many of us purchase food? Now, do you know more and more it is becoming common to purchase food by weight? Are you all seeing this? You go into restaurants, you go into food areas, and you have your choices. You can fill what you want. You're very happy. You put a lot of gravy because you like gravy, and you end up paying $45 for a plate of food. Now, it is important to understand not just kilograms and SI units, but I'm going to ask the question, and Damien, you can't answer, nor Lynn, nor any of the BNSI staff, or CrossQ staff. All right. What is the difference between gross weight and net weight? Margaret, you cannot answer that. No, you just presented on it, you know what I mean? Anyone else? Sir? Could we have a roaming mic for him? Is there another one, or Damien's? Yeah. So that everyone can hear online as well. So gross weight, what is gross weight?
So in the context of
food.
Food.
Yes.
I was going to speak in aviation terms.
Aviation, well,
gross weight is the weight that you would have the product in, you have the product, the bare product, along with the packaging and everything. Yeah?
Absolutely. Everyone heard that online as well, I'm sure. Yeah. Gross weight includes the weight of everything that's present. The package, the container, if it's in a bottle, if it's in a bag, if it's in a box, if it's a plane.
Yeah, does everything, passengers, fuel, everything.
Everything, fuel, passengers.
That's a gross weight.
All right, and could someone else, perhaps, you could pass the mic, tell me then, and this would be the easy part, what is net weight? All right, so the lady, would you like to announce your name and...
Michelle Hackett. The net weight is the weight of the contents only. So, for instance, paint, I make paint, the paint in the can, there's a net.
Absolutely. So you all getting that. So we know gross weight and net weight. Round of applause. All right. Now, if you see a purchasing price on something, so let's take it back to food, because that's the demonstration that Damien is about to give. A purchasing price for food. And you are buying food for $10, just to keep it simple, $10 per kilogram. Okay? And by the law, what are we saying here? Is that gross weight or net weight? What do you think? Audience? Net weight. You're paying for the food. You expect to see 10 kilograms weight of food. So if I was a smart retailer and I had metal containers and I was selling by gross weight as opposed to net weight, you could see easily how you would be losing some change. All right? And there are different types of containers, aren't there? Having different weights, not so? All right. Mr. Prescott is going to demonstrate on our calibrated, traceable, accurate scale the accurate way in which you should be selling food in a prepackaged container. Now remember, gross weight and net weight, bear that in mind, okay? Mr. Prescott, sir, what would be the weight of the container alone? Show the audience the container, and I will take it over to you. Turn off mine.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Rain. Anybody who's wondering why I'm wearing gloves, I cannot or should not handle the mass metrology weights with just my bare hands, because I will transfer oil from my skin onto the weight, and that will affect the accuracy of it, right? So this is why I have on my glovey glove. Even before we get to measuring the container, which we will do, when I go to a client, I am looking for a few things. I am looking to see if the spirit level is actually level. If you can zoom in there. I have gone to quite a number of organizations and seen that bubble on the outside of the circle. All right, I will give another example when I'm finished. I am also looking to see if there is any residue on the scale. right? Residue does affect it. I will show you an example. Can you see the scale is reading minus 0.3? All right, so we had some summer interns two summers ago. Well, we had some last year too, but the first set we had in 2022, they were amazed that air, just passing air, can make this scale record a change. So, well, like all the way up to 7.6 it just went. If we want me to
Did
do
you
it
see
again.
that? Do it again.
That's just passing air. This obviously is a super accurate scale, all right? The ones that you would usually encounter in the supermarket, not as accurate as this one. But if it were, you will be paying a few extra grams or pounds or kilograms, depending on how they have this scale measuring as a consumer. Then we've also recognized that persons utilizing scales, selling food by weight, are not accurately tearing the scale between customers. I've seen that.
All right, so wonderful. So we're pausing to let that digest. Now, what is tearing of a scale? Do we know? People looking a little lost. Online, do you know what tearing is? I know my aviation man knows what tearing is. Tearing, these are concepts that are very important, you know. Damien just mentioned it, and sometimes we assume that the people in industry understand it, and I would challenge you because sometimes it's often missed. Margaret, T-A-R-E. So it's not T-E-A-R like eye tears. It is tearing of the scale. It is actually performing an activity with your scale. Would you like to say that to the online viewers, please, sir?
It is causing the scale to show 0 while something is on the scale. So the scale reads 0 while something is already on it.
So you're zeroing the scale before you actually weigh the content of the material, food, whatever that you want to gain the weight of. Did you know that most, if not all, digital scales, Damien, I would dare to say all, can be tiered? Who didn't know that? Raise a hand. All right. Yeah, many people didn't know that. Online, you can raise your hand too and indicate if you knew that or didn't know that. Now, Damien is going to demonstrate, so if you can get the camera back on the scale, Damien is going to demonstrate how to tear a scale while selling food.
All right, so now my scale is recording minus 0.3. I'm going to zero it. All right, it's at 0, it's tiered. I am placing the empty food container, and everyone can see that it's empty. The empty food container is on the scale. Now, I challenge you, if you leave here and you're not full, to take a venture into a food deli and check to see if the attendant that is measuring your food and charging you is tearing the scale between customers, all right?
Fabulous point. Now, I am observing something that is obvious, and I hope you are too in the audience. What do you see there on the reading of the scale? We need that camera. We need the camera view once more. Let's go back to the scale. Back to the scale view that was in view, if you don't mind, cameraman. Right. What are we seeing there? 42.4 grams. This is just the container, you know. This is just the container. All right, Damien? Let's take that question before Damien continues.
Yeah, my question is, and I don't like to be devil's advocate, but the truth is the container has a cost. So what if the vendor is selling you?
I preempted that question. You know why? It's an excellent question. And this is what you do. You work the cost of your expenses, preparation of the food, containers, into the cost of the food. so that it's very clear that you're paying for food and you're paying for it, obviously mindful of your cost of expenses. What's happening in some occasions is that you're seeing the cost, but then you're paying for a heavier gross weight on purchase. You need to incorporate the cost of your container in the cost of your commodity. You follow? So instead of selling the food for $10 per kilogram, you would advertise it at $10.50 per kilogram. Yeah? Where you're making back, you're not making a loss because you have to account for your costs as a business person. But legally, customers, consumers, people like me and you, when you're buying, you want to take home 10 kilograms of your commodity. If you see it priced like that. Chicken. Chicken is, how does chicken sell per kilogram in supermarkets now, today? Average. I'm here, too much money was the response. Enough per kilogram. Now, if I take my chicken, sorry to pull away a little bit, Damien, and I put it in a yellow tray, and I wrap the yellow tray with some sellotape, yellow, and the absorbent pad, don't forget the absorbent pad. And then I wrap. Some people might wrap once. Some people might give it a good 3 wraps. And then I take all of that and place it on a scale. And simply whatever the scale tells me, I slap that price on the chicken.
Frozen weight too, Mr. Ray. Don't forget frozen weight.
Frozen weight.
Water and the chicken frozen.
Hello. You understand? Am I getting a fair trade for my food in that thing? No. Vegetables. Now, a lot of people, when they're harvesting vegetables, they harvest them early in the morning because there's a lot of dew. And I hear him mud, I not gonna go there because the camera on me. Right? I know of a farmer who would go as far to wet down the stuff before taking it to the retailer to be sold. Why? Because the water content now is almost 25%, Damien, more. All right? As consumers, we need to be aware of our rights, aware of the law, because more and more when we bring awareness, that is what brings what? Change. Okay? So Damien, you can continue. Remember, this container by itself, nothing in there, you know, not even gravy. And you are 42.2 grams already. Go ahead, Damien.
All right, so we have our empty container. I will now fill it with my carbs, my chicken, my lettuce, my coleslaw.
You gotta have coleslaw.
Yeah. All right.
How much food you buying? What was your purchase?
So we are now recording 242.2 grams. All right, so you're at just about 200 grams. The empty container was 42.5 actually, Mr. Ryan. So, well, let me settle. That's another thing that I don't observe often and I would like to see more of. People operating the scale is also a skill.
Yes.
Yeah, just don't take for granted that you just throw stuff on it. At one telco, they were selling the old coax cable. So, you know, copper is a in-demand mineral or metal. But they were actually measuring the 3-foot bands on the outside of the scale. The scale was not 3 feet wide. So about 1.5 feet, of the coax cable was on the outside of the scale. And
so let's see what's the weight of that with some of it sticking off. And this is a very good example. Take off some more if you could. Yeah. Look at that. 190 when he gets it to balance.
Well, it's probably a better example at that site. But when we calculated what they would have lost that year in selling that coax cable overseas, because the quantity that the client received in the States was not corresponding to what that telco sold when they measured. So their losses here on the island, the losses were over $250,000. That's how much coax cable is around Barbados being repurposed. So putting your food by weight your coax cable, whatever it is you're measuring on the scale correctly, so that the load cells can actually measure them, because they're load cells, in some cases, on each 4 corners and then one in the middle. When you go to the doctor and he tells you stand up straight, you don't put your hand like this, right? Because your weight is not going to be accurately represented. And that is just the situation with that telco. But here, we can see that one, the scale is accurate because the empty container was 44.234, and there's a 200, this is a 200 gram weight here. All right, so you're good to go.
So excellent. So if Mr. Damian Prescott in his Michael Jackson glove were to slap a price on that container saying that he's selling you 242 grams of food, would that be accurate? No. Now, this is the kind of awareness that we're trying to bring to trade. Okay? And this is a very simple example, but you could appreciate there are some examples that are far more complex. How scary in the medical field, sir? And I'm seeing the practitioners in the room going, oh yeah. Would it be to have situations, and I'm not saying that this happens, but we need to make sure it doesn't, where when we're weighing very small quantities, you're talking about drugs, you heard about it spoken in 3 of the presentations today, where the difference in 0.1 of a gram matters, okay? And if we're using incorrect practices, we can run ourselves in trouble. Now, what else would you like to take them through, Damien?
I don't want to be perceived as picking on the fish or fishing sector, but it is an area that I frequent. And as a consumer, when you go into the fish market and you ask to purchase 10 pounds of dolphin, you are, by law, supposed to leave the fish market with 10 pounds of dolphin. Also, as a consumer, you have a choice to leave the fish market with your, what we would consider fish waste, because you're paying for it. What the vendors do, and they may not be best pleased to hear that I am highlighting some malpractice, but that's the reality of the situation. You can only get change if you highlight it. Let's use this as an example and say that that was 10 pounds of dolphin. What do they do after they measure it the first time? They can skin it, they can cut off the head, right? They might even take out some of the belly, depending on who you're dealing with. You are getting in your bag when you walk out of that market less than 10 pounds of fish. Now, as a consumer, you have a choice. You can either take the waste. I take the waste, I put it in my garden. When I had a dog, I would incorporate it in my dog food. But under no circumstances are you supposed to allow anyone to sell you a commodity that is deficient in its measurement, right? So just note that, and that's just one example. You have a right to ask for it. They can't tell you no. You also have a right to look at the scale, right? You can ask, just as Margaret said. No one can deny you a visual of the measurement recording on the scale. So those are some of the areas that we are trying to bring awareness and change to, so that consumers do not feel it in their pockets. Like I said earlier, I love fish, but I'm not prepared to pay for fish that I am not taking home.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Now, we're seamlessly going to go into the question and answer session. I would ask for a round of applause for Damien and his demonstration. I hope it lent some clarity. I will say that along the journey, you've heard about pending legislation. In particular, there's the Barbados Metrology Bill, which will soon be enacted as an act, where the legal components will be mandatory and so on. And that would speak to some of the more advanced pieces of equipment that at the moment the Weights and Measures Act simply did not consider, okay? So for example, you heard about speedometers, you would get the notion about breathalyzers, even the blood pressure devices. All of these things need to be within accuracy, and they will be accounted for after the proclamation of the Barbados Metrology Bill, okay? Now, I know that you have a few questions in mind because I'm seeing you could see the wheels turning and churning and so on, right? Do we have to get into the practice of moving away from pounds to kilograms, even in our speech? Now, when we were at school, there was a firm understanding and appreciation of pounds. In this discussion, you may wonder, what do you mean move away from pounds? That's us traditionally. When you go in the fish market, and you even heard Damien say it because of practice, you're going to ask for 10 pounds of fish, right? How many pounds is a kilogram? Or how many kilograms is a pound? Who could tell me that? Jeez, my aviation man up first again. You say 2.2. 2.2 what though? Which is heavier? Right? So what does that mean? Give me the equation. Right. Did you all hear that online? We need the online viewers to hear as well.
To convert from pounds to kilogram, you just multiply by 2.2.
So 1 kilogram equals 2.2 pounds. It's simple. What we at BNSI and even the DCCA and so on, we're trying to encourage is a quality culture where my son failed a question in his exam where they were asking the difference between a mountain and a hill, right? And there's a question in his geography. What is the difference between a mountain and a hill? He said, I know that, Dad. A mountain is 1,100 meters, and anything under that is a hill. And you know why he got it wrong? Because in his textbook, it's 1,100 feet. So his concept of metric versus thing, because of the school system, no, he's more metric than imperial. He said feet. So, all right, so like how much? He said a meter is about this, Dad, but a foot is like my foot. And it was amazing to me because culturally, we have grown up with feet, haven't we? The carpenter can come and say you need 10 4-inch nails, you need 2.5 foot of lumber. I see the gentleman at the back nodding. We have been educated, indoctrinated in the imperial system. And we're hearing today from all of the presenters, Damien, Nicole, Margaret, that the international community, for some time now, recognizes the metric system as the international measurement of units. How can you be competitive and trade if the German tourists come in for World Cup and they go to the fish market and they ask for 14 kilograms of tuna, and the man looking back at the tourists as though saying, how much pounds you want? He said, no, I had 14 kilograms. How much pounds you want? So there's a language barrier, not just the German and the English, it is the measurement practices that we have. And this is real, you know. I am bringing this down to basic level. But think about a country wanting to export and trade and we do not appreciate, you know. I'm seeing some signals there, which means that there are questions. Yes?
So let me give a real life example of how dangerous that is in aviation. We have DHL that comes here daily. So they have various planes and their origin is, they're a German company. Their fuel gauges are in kilograms. Most of the fuelers down here know how to fuel in pounds. So we've had so I hope this is online, but anyways now. So we had a situation where the fuelers, you get a fuel sheet and they tell you they want 70,000 kilograms. The fueler goes up there, he's not aware of the fact that they want kilograms, he puts in 70,000 pounds. You can see where the problem occurs. And that's just one example.
That's real.
That's real.
People, this is real, you know. So not just competitiveness, but guess what? Safety, health, the environment, measurements have become critical. There are some online questions as well. We'll ask Heather perhaps to maybe identify one or two, or Vanessa, online questions, yes.
So we have a question here from Chanel Lynch, and I believe this is based on Damien's presentation. She's asking whether organizations are required to provide proof to customers that their scales have been calibrated, and she's used the examples of fish markets, supermarkets, etc. So she's basically asking whether there is a legal requirement to say that your scales have been calibrated.
Yeah, so to answer the question online from Ms. Lynch, there is legal standing for a consumer to query or question the accuracy of the scale. BNSI, as stated before, we are not an enforcement entity. So if you are querying the accuracy of a scale in a supermarket or the fish market, yes, you can do that through an intervention with the DCCA or a Fair Trading Commission. So if you feel that your scale is inaccurate or the scale that provided you with a commodity was inaccurate, then you can raise that. It will eventually get to BNSA as well, but the enforcement aspect is dealt with by the DCCA / or the FTC.
When I first, and before we go to the next question, and I hope, Chanel, that answers your question. We actually spoke before the seminar, and thank you for joining, and thank you for engaging. When I first got my driver's license, there was a particular pump of a particular station, so you're talking about years and years ago, that every evening I would see a line of cars, Damien, right, waiting to go to this one pump. Other pumps free, you know. And they had another gas station just up the hill that didn't have that kind of activity, man, waiting in the road for this one pump. So, you know, I'm a youngster, you know, I'm 18, so I asked, what's going on with the pump? Huh? The fella said, well, this is the pump here, boy. I can tell you, look, I fill my tank and pay the less that I pay for the whole of it. The problem was quickly resolved, though. Because, you know, clearly there was something happening that that gas attendant and gas station was losing money, right? And the pump was off, and it was thing. But there are times where we do not detect that there's a problem, PS, you know? And there are some scales that are being used now in industry, and if you look closely, some vendors, unfortunately, when you look, you see not for trade as a sticker on the scale. We've had to point out, you know, fella or madam, this is not a commercial scale. This is perhaps a scale that you can use in your kitchen if you're just measuring some salt or sugar or flour, you know, to get an approximate. But when you're selling to a consumer, and we want to be a country of international repute and reputation, we can't be seen as indulging in activities that are not lawful. And people pick it up, huh? If you have practices that are not best practices. So this seminar and this conference is really to encourage us as citizens to enhance our quality awareness. And measurements with scales, like Damien said, that's just maybe 2% of where we need to go. We need to have a quality culture. We need to be aware of quality, aware of these little things. Challenge a retailer. Say, hey man, you tearing this thing? Yeah? And it's not to be mischievous, you know. It is to improve our systems and the way in which we do things. I mentioned it before. I'll mention it again with our deputy PS in the room. 5%. Now, the difference between 200 and 242. Quickly, do a percentage there. What's that? All the brighties, all the BNSI brighties in the room. How much is that? Yeah, 4.22%, I think. I don't have my thing, but what's the difference between 200 grams and 242 as we saw on the scale there? What are you seeing? Should be able to do that in your head, I think. I see Io's fingers moving fast. And she know even. So what is it? Percentage? What, these people got degrees at TPS, huh? I employ the right people?
Getting 17.35, I don't know.
Wow. Y'all hearing that? Who's speaking? Who said it first? Okay, so clearly articulate your percentage loss again there, Vanessa. If it was you that said it.
The percentage loss would be 17.35.
17.
Because they rounded off.
Are y'all comfortable losing 17.35% on purchases? Huh? I am not. Do you understand that 5%, when I was up here earlier in my presentation, translates, PS, nationally, 5% translates to $46.9 million? So 17 point, how much ever percent, is 3 times that. You're looking at maybe $150+ million that industries and public sector and things cannot afford to just throw away. Good? Cost of living is, seemingly higher than it ought to be if we address these things. Very, very real. Very real. And impacting us directly. Okay? 2 more questions.
Yeah, more of a comment than a question, and you did touch on it when you mentioned about blood pressures. When we talk about money and fuel and different measures, food, that's one thing, but just think of the personal issue of having your blood pressure monitor that you may have bought at AA Lucky or Carb Rehab or wherever, and then you're doing your blood pressure and thinking that it's okay. And in a society where we have 40% of us have hypertension, so you could be there thinking that your blood pressures are okay, but unless you take your blood pressure to your GP or whoever, who hopefully he is as well calibrated as well, and make some sort of correlation, you could actually have a false sense of security, so that's important.
Absolutely critical point. And not just false sense of security, You may encounter a false diagnosis, doctor. Study it. The pressure look high on the machine. The doctor said, well, we can put you on this low, high blood pressure medication when you ought not to be. The cost of dialysis in Barbados, if you research it, and you would know, you would have an idea, millions of dollars. When you look at the diagnostic steps to test to make sure that we're accurate in our testing, are we calibrating our instrumentation? We trust the law digits, So the scale just now said 242.2. We did all that we're supposed to do. We put it on the scale properly. We look, we measure, and we record it accurately. Is it accurate? So lives, reputations, doctors are making decisions based on data. Is the data that's feeding into the doctors accurate? In 3 years, no more than 3 years, in Trinidad and Tobago, forgive me, we're just having this conversation. There was an incident where patients were diagnosed with cancer and they were being administered through the machinery, the chemotherapy treatments. Unfortunately, there was an uncalibrated instrument within that whole process, and patients were given thousands times the dosage of chemo, and people died. This is years ago, So you correct it when you realize, yes, but lives lost. So measurement, although it sits in the background, is very, very important if we're going to get it right. Did you all enjoy and appreciate this particular seminar? I did. Could we get a round of applause for all of the participants in the seminar? Absolutely. Are we going to be more instrumental in getting the type of information that we need to get our measurements right? So please engage with the BNSI, engage with us. We have other entities like the DCCA here, and learn how we can extend this into a quality culture. Online, do we have any more questions or even comments? Yes, go ahead.
So we have Ms. Lynch. She was asking whether or not there is a certificate that these organizations are required to have on display in terms of that their instruments are calibrated.
Right, so Damien's going to answer that one.
So the certificates that BNSI would issue are not usually made available for clients to see. Those are internal documents. What the consumer or customer should be privy to is what we would place on the measurement device, which is a sticker, just like Margaret would have spoken to a little earlier. So when you go to the gas station, please look for that sticker that says calibrated on this date by this person and sign. When I do calibrations for clients, I put a sticker on the instruments before they go back so they can see last calibrated date and next due calibration. Those are intrinsic in scientific metrology. Those are just part of the job. That's what's supposed to be there. But you can, if you want to, as a consumer, you have a right to ask for calibration information. You might not necessarily get the certificate because that's not public information, but there has to be a recording somewhere to state this scale has been calibrated on this date by this entity and signed by the auditing officer or the metrologist as they state.
Absolutely. And if you don't have a consideration for calibrating your instruments, believe you, it is hit or miss because things can go wrong, okay? And we're not positioning Barbados to be a hit or miss society. We want to position as a society of excellence. And including in that excellence conversation is measurement and metrology. It's as simple as that, all right? Maybe two other questions, one more from online and one more in the audience I see here. So we take the online one first, yeah. Y'all enjoying this?
So we have Kathy and Daisy. She's asking, what do you do when you purchase your vegetables and measure them on your scale and it is not right then? So I am guessing that she's asking if you purchase vegetables at one particular weight and then you measure them on your own scale and it's not right, what recourse do you have?
Okay, so very good question. I see Damien smiling, so he's walking towards the mic.
Well, that's a tricky affair. It will lend itself to chain of custody because when the consumer leaves the retail institute, organization, company, what happens between the point of purchase and your home could be many different things. So my example is that when I buy broccoli, and in the supermarket, I don't eat the broccoli stem. So I break them off in the supermarket and I just put them back on the tray. You understand? So if you, that's just my case. I only pay for broccoli. I don't want the stem, all right? But to answer the question online is that obviously the scale in the home environment should be a calibrated scale as well. And if you're confident that the scale that you're using is calibrated, then you can go back to that retailer and ask a question.
All right, so we continue. I think the lady might have had a follow-up, perhaps, Vanessa, I don't know. But before we move on, and my master is break off your broccoli stems. I love it. Now, listen to this now. I have, you're a purchaser, you're a consumer like everybody else. This lady was selling lovely vegetables, but it was a mixed bag. So it had in a little, chives and a little this and a little that and seasonings and things. Mix up for $5. So you buy a bag for $5. Noticeably, some bags were bigger, heavier, had more. So I just raised it with her, not to be mischievous. I said, well, how much should a bag weigh if I buy in a bag? He said, no, a bag is $5. I said, no, but how much, just what will we get in here? Things. She said, no, a bag is $5, sir. Right? So even in trying to encourage, and then she started on me for years, I'm selling food here, nothing ain't wrong with my food. You come here now trying to tell me that I'm doing something wrong. What I doing wrong? I sell the thing. If I tell you $5 and you give me $10, I can give you $5 change. I ain't robbing you, it's $5. So understand that even the language in which we use to try to bring people on board, you have to translate all this technical stuff to something that people can appreciate. Now, there's some things that sell in units, so you don't weigh, you buy a tray of eggs by number. Sometimes you get some small eggs, sometimes you get some bigger eggs. Some people sell oranges by weight, some people sell oranges by units. A bag of 8 oranges. But then, in summer, sometimes because of the lack of water, you're seeing some small oranges. All of these are things that we need to bring to conversation if we want to be competitive as a nation. So I'm trying to get the vendors to put on their signs, not just pounds, but kilograms. So sweet potatoes, $5 a pound, or how much ever, you divide by 2.2 to get the kilogram weight. And one man told me, but if I sell it at this, that mean that I can be selling it and making a loss? It's $2 a pound, how you mean 85 cents per kilogram? Now I can be losing money, I just said, but sir, and you don't do it in a condescending way, If you're not exposed to it, this kilogram concept and cubic meters as opposed to, is something that we do not know, PS, And we have to know, though. And that's the point that's being made. More and more people asking questions to find out where do I have to, to go to get it right. And sometimes we run to the papers and the thing and FTC and thing, but I would consider conversations with the immediate source first. Because oftentimes people are not being mischievous and trying to trick you. They're just unaware. Was that useful? I think, sir, you had one more.
It was more so highlighting the great work that BNSI was doing here. We had a situation about 2 months ago where a carrier was coming to Barbados and it had a nose wheel problem. The nose wheel of the aircraft, everything goes up because it's a high rotational force. It's causing knocking sound and the pilot is flying, yeah? So it went back to Canada. They tried to diagnose it there, then it came back to Barbados. It was still the same thing. They had it there for a couple of weeks. They tried to diagnose it again, came back to Barbados. So somebody, one of my guys on the team decided, you know what, let's check the tire pressures. You guys did some calibration for us. And back in Canada, they were like, no, it can't be tire pressures. So we checked the tire pressures. It's supposed to be 182 PSI. We checked down here, it was 175 PSI. So because it's 2 nose wheels, one was heavy exactly. So you had a rotational issue. When the investigation was finished, anyway, but Canada again, this is Transport Canada now, they got involved. Their gauges in Canada weren't calibrated to the standard down here. So you were having a situation where our gauges were actually reading the right PSI as opposed to the higher. So it's excellent work done by BNSI, yeah?
That is incredible. I hope we keep this recorded. Thank you, sir, for sharing that. Thank you, team, for doing that, right? And that is what allows us to keep going at BNSI. So here, can you picture Canada on the map? Huge. You can't even see Barbados. However, on the international arena, we can hold our head high, have a conversation that is technical with all confidence and all assurance that we're giving sound advice. And that is how we're supposed to bat in the international arena, right? Not big and small thing. Before we be frightened when the International Canadian Authority get involved. Oh, shoot, they get involved. But if you're doing things the right way, if you know that you operating according to international standards, you don't have to hide. And that's how we get more competitive. So I thank you for that example, really. And I thank you, team, for allowing that to be an example. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Any more, or are we going to eat some lunch? We are about 12 o'clock, 12:03:35, according to the calibrated time. We happy, or we want to talk some more?
Mr. Rain, just some comments in the chat. persons admitting that they also break off the broccoli stem, so Damien is not alone. and, and some admitting that they do it with other produce.
All right, Victor, I can give you, but listen, I know that this is being recorded, right? But Damien, you're not alone. You're not alone. People are backing off his stems. And I see a couple hands in the audience saying, me too, me too. So if the supermarket owner catch what are doing that, do not say that you're from BNSI, right? You're on your own. You understand what I'm telling you? You're on your own. However, it makes sense. Huh? All right, Victor. Yeah.
Okay, with regard to the scales, mention was made that is traceable. What does that mean?
Okay, so very good question. Thank you. And I am loving this because I'm having the support of my board too. Many of y'all may not know there are quite a few board members around us. Traceability lends to the notion that the measurements that we are taking here in Barbados will be just as good as if we did it in one of the international communities who are deemed to be more accurate. So we have these, if you could stand and see, Victor, those are stainless steel masses or weights. You see them there in the case? And we have a certificate of calibration with traceability to somewhere. And that traceability has to be to an agency or calibrator with a higher accuracy. So we get our weights as highly accurate as Damien described, calibrated by somebody who has even more accurate weights. And they in turn calibrate their stuff with somebody who has even more accurate weights. So the original kilogram used to be kept in a vault surrounded by 0 atmosphere in France. And when we signed the meter, the convention meter of the SI in 1843, that was the original kilogram for which the world had traceability. In other words, that was the original fella to say that a kilogram is a kilogram. So we're actually living in an era where moving from imperial to international thing is like novel. It's like, you know, when the internet was made. So we now have international system of units, and the kilogram sits in France in a vault as the original, and all other measurements should be traceable to that. You get me? However, 2 years ago, and Damien would tell you, scientists, joint from NCC in Canada, I believe, and NIST in the USA, have developed another method to be even more accurate than that kilogram, because they realized that over years, even when they look to measure back that unit, it's sitting in the vault, the fella losing a little weight or gaining 1 or 2. I'm not talking about a whole gram, huh? I mean, you're talking about nanograms. But to scientists, that kind of thing is exciting scientists. Why is it gaining nanograms when there's no atmosphere, it can't rust, there's no air, it can't wait, there's no dust? So another measure, Victor, has been created. If I go into the science of it, it would be too technical. But traceability means that if I come with these weights to say that I'm checking you, somebody has to be checking mine. And somebody has to be checking theirs to make sure that there's a traceable line of calibration, meaning that it's accurate. If not, countries will be doing their own thing, yeah? And there's no traceability to one central unit of measurement called the kilogram. Other measurements have different constants, like Avogadro's constant, and I may go, that might be too much. But does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay, and there's a one last question. So when you get questions after lunchtime, you know that is a good seminar.
So if I have my own weights that I use to check my scales, how often should I have my weights verified?
Excellent question. And this is from Horace, and they also calibrate, and I see Damien smiling. Now, there are different methodologies, huh? The use of scales sometimes dictates how often you calibrate. In other words, if something is used every day, so it's in heavy use, you would imagine that you may want to calibrate those guys maybe twice a year, you know, or whatever. If they're weights that you use once a year just to do a check, and there's no constant use, you would appreciate that they're not going to have the stress on them, and you may have a more lenient period, yeah, with which you calibrate. But what I know is that if you're operating a procedure to a standard, oftentimes the standard itself would indicate like the frequency with which you should calibrate. So if you wanted your laboratory accredited to say ISO 17025, there is an actual procedure in there that would say that your instruments need to be calibrated, say, once a year or whatever the period, but in the standard it would state that. Does that help? Wait, sorry, for the online viewers, I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go.
My standard weights
Yes.
that I use to check my scales.
Yes.
Obviously, the scales are heavily used, so those scales are checked or calibrated probably 3 to 4 times a year because those are daily use.
Okay.
But the weights that I use to verify those scales in between, how often should I have my weights checked? I have a set of stainless steel weights that I use. I use those probably twice to 3 times a year because my scales are calibrated by an external source. But obviously, I still do verifications within, not every day, probably twice a year we do verifications to make sure that even though the external source is calibrated, there's no deviation or very little deviation. So how often should I send my weights to you to be verified?
Well, the recommendation, and I use the word recommendation because we got a few of these queries recently, is at least once a year. That's the rule of thumb. But again, like Mr. Ryan said, it's industry specific, so I wouldn't advise Mr. Blenman to calibrate his some of his instruments once a year. The aviation sector, when I was working in it, we would advise usually twice, sometimes even 3 times a year. But in your specific case for hard expense, I would say that you would be quite secure doing it once a year. That's the mass weights. Your scales need a bit more frequent calibration, which you mentioned. So once a year is good for you? Yeah.
All right, so all smiles in the room, and thank you for that, Damien. Now, I know that there's a thank you vote that's going to go up now, so I'm going to hand it back to the MC. Time has gone, but before she comes, I heartily want to thank you all for the time spent with BNSI. You know, many of you had other meetings, and this one, you know, you chose to attend. Online, thank you for the time, thank you for the engagement, and that's how we develop, that's how we grow, that's how we learn. So from my heart as acting director, I would like to thank the team of BNSI for putting it together. Again, oftentimes they're like, Mr. Ryan, but these time frames that you're throwing at me, you know, to have a seminar and an awareness seminar. And they pulled it off, and they pulled it off, in my view, with excellence. So please give the BNSI team a round of applause.
But Mr. Ryan, you already thanked everybody. So there's nothing for me to do other than to invite you all to lunch. We're a little over time, but never mind. I think we spent the time wisely. We had a wonderful discussion. And yes, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Deputy PS, thank you so much. We are very honored to have you. And all of you, thank you. Let's eat. Thank you. All right.
If before you leave the room you want to come and just visualize the standards that we have here, you can come and have a peek. Yeah.